The ABC 17 News Special, Rebuilding Mid-Missouri, starts now.
If you live in Jefferson City, you need to be in your tornado shelter now. This thing is on the ground.
I'm down 54, and the destruction was just unbelievable.
Homes destroyed, businesses destroyed. It's very, very bad.
Not a healing process of putting on a roof or cutting the brush or something like that. The healing process is in the heart.
You know, right now it's just a matter of putting the pieces back together.
Thanks for joining us for this ABC 17 News Special, Rebuilding Mid-Missouri 1 year later. I'm ABC 17 STORMTRACK Chief Meteorologist Jessica Quick. Tonight marks a year since the EF3 tornado hit parts of Jefferson City, Eldon, and other parts of the area. The STORMTRACK weather team will explain what fueled those dangerous storms and share the powerful stories of recovery. We'll also hear how Mid-Missouri is preparing for a possible tornado during the COVID-19 pandemic. The week of May 20th was primed for at least 1 day of severe weather. By Monday of that week, we already had weather alert day in place for Tuesday, the day before the tornado. The pattern was looking favorable for multiple systems to move through unstable air, so it was looking like it was going to be a busy week. And that night, we had reports of tornadoes in Callaway and Phelps counties. The severe weather outlook issued on Monday for Wednesday didn't include much of mid-Missouri, but it escalated quickly by Wednesday. Parts of the area were in a level 4 or moderate risk for severe weather. Kevin, Luke, and Bridget took over the forecasting duties from Tuesday on. Did anything unusual about the setup for Wednesday jump out at you early in the week?
Early in the week, we kind of knew we were going to be stuck in a pretty similar pattern really for the next couple of days. It was kind of weird that it's one of these things where we see multiple rounds over and over. But yeah, we were stuck in a little bit of an atypical pattern to say the least, and we kind of saw that one coming though.
Let's fast forward to the night of. There were tornado warnings beginning as early as around 7 o'clock, and they didn't stop until the wee hours of Thursday morning. What were your initial thoughts of how the night was going to unfold?
Well, I remember how we kind of went into the night. We had that first round that rolled through about 7 o'clock, like you mentioned, and that's kind of where we thought the buck was going to stop. And we thought once we got to the 10 o'clock show and things started to slowly quiet down, that we would have thunderstorms throughout the overnight hours, but we were probably lowering that severe weather threat. And of course, we had that storm really start to intensify after about 10:45, and that's when we started to have to ramp back up coverage. I remember before that, we kind of all got together and huddled and said, all right, good job, guys. You know, let's get through the rest of this evening and things should be okay. Obviously, we were at that point still waiting for the main event.
It's hard to believe a year has passed, but I feel that all of us as a team, the community, have learned so much from this experience. And it was hard for me to not be there, but after spending the past year talking about the night with people who went through the storm and responded minutes after, it's pretty amazing how people heeded the message and have been really resilient in the recovery process. Being able to go back and analyze the storm on radar afterward has been a really big help in getting comfortable with our weather system and tracking storms effectively for our viewers. How has this event affected you as a meteorologist?
Well, you know what, Jess, I came in, like you said, after the storm. I wasn't here for it, but I've still taken a look at those radar images. That's how I trained when I started here at the station, and it has had an impact. And even just working on stories for this special, you really get a sense for what impact this had on the people in and around Jeff City.
I think what I learned from that night is the importance of what we do here at ABC 17, tracking thunderstorms, giving Mid-Missouri the idea of when that storm is going to be impacting them. At one point, if you were watching ABC 17 that evening, we gave you a 40-minute lead time to that storm moving into Jefferson City. It started to cause that damage as it moved pretty quickly into Eldon, rolling up Highway 54. Thankfully, that a part of Cole County, as it was rolling up Highway 54, is fairly rural, and its potential of impacting anyone was fairly low at that point. But it was a very strong thunderstorm, and the fact that we were able to get that message out with that amount of time and you know, give folks that kind of warning, I think was one of the biggest lessons for me, is that ultimately what folks are looking for is when is it going to be impacting me and what do I need to do to stay safe.
It's certainly sent me some sort of aspect, kind of gives you perspective on everything here is what it really ultimately taught me, and also kind of set the high water mark. Hopefully something that we don't ever have to revisit again is seeing something that strong and that destructive. But of course, we'll be on top of each and every storm that ultimately rolls through mid-Missouri.
JC Schools tells us the tornado left it with a nearly $2.7 million bill in damages. ABC 17 anchor Deborah Kendrick sat down with the school district to find out how the recovery process is going.
Four Jefferson City school properties were hit by the tornado in May. One of the hardest hit buildings was Simonson 9th Grade Center. You might recall this video actually showing the moments the tornado hit. School leaders told me repairs to Simonson 9th Grade Center cost a little more than $800,000. The night of May 23rd, the halls of Simonson 9th Grade Center were quiet. Fast forward to 11:49. In just a matter of seconds, Simonson would leave the district with a costly repair.
See plywood up there, and that is all temporary roof that we had to install because there was no roof up there. You can see every one of the windows were blown out. There's leaves and debris still stuck in the blind.
The district tells me they're thankful the tornado hit the time it did.
Less than 12 hours after students are in the building for the last time a tornado hits it, and it's in the shape that it's in now.
All the damage to Simonson cost the district more than $802,000. The chief financial officer, Jason Hoffman, told me they are working on a solicitation for bids since it's already been declared a surplus property. The district says several developers have already shown interest in acquiring the building.
And we've had people that are thinking of condos. Some people are looking at some affordable housing. It's a 90,000 square foot building.
Damages to Jefferson City High School cost the district more than $1.6 million. More than $69,000 went to Nichols Career Center. More than $192,000 went to repairs at Thorpe Gordon Elementary. The nearly $2.7 million price tag the district spent is the final total as all repairs have been completed. Another cost the district added from the tornado last year was more than $2 million in the purchase of about 50 homes. Right now, the district doesn't have immediate plans to develop, but this will give them some flexibility to do so in the future.
Some big rebuilding projects are underway in Jefferson City. ABC 17's Lucas Geisler takes a look at that work and how much has been spent to rebuild the city.
Buildings once torn apart look a bit more put together. Millions of dollars worth of work has gone into repairing Jefferson City. Since the tornado hit in May, insurance companies have taken in $155 million in claims. Those companies have paid out $144 million so far. Jefferson City Building Department Director Larry Burkhart says the lion's share of the work needed done has been complete. The department has approved more than 260 permits for repair work in the last year.
A lot of that has been fortunately addressed as far as getting most of those properties back into shape.
That includes homes damaged near Jefferson City High School, which the district bought last year. Burkhart says the tornado may leave the city with fewer places to live than before.
Help people get back into some type of affordable housing.
The experience of the last year taught Burkhart the importance of new building codes that take tornadoes and their effects into account.
I see on TV all these other towns, like down south, getting destroyed. It's just like I have a lot of better understanding of what something could be.
Reporting in Jefferson City, Lucas Geisler, ABC 17 News.
Tornadoes at night like the one we saw last year in mid-Missouri can be difficult to track. ABC 17 forecaster Maddie S. explains some of the challenges behind tracking nighttime tornadoes.
Now, these are particularly dangerous not because they're stronger than other tornadoes, but because there's typically little warning with these. You can't really see them as it's dark, and a lot of times they are rain-wrapped. Now, these make up about 38% of tornadoes across the United States, and with that, it's a pretty big issue for a lot of us. Now, Jefferson City tornado, as we all know, came at night. It was a nocturnal tornado. So just how were we prepared? With these tornadoes causing 44% of deaths across the United States, there are a few things that we look into as meteorologists to try and get warning out ahead of time. Now, one giant tool that we use across the board is a debris tracker. As you can see on this animation, as a tornado moves through, it starts to kick up some dust and some leaves and sort of debris. It's kind of in the name, as you can see, a debris tracker. As it kicks up this stuff, you can see it on radar. Now, this is a look at our debris tracker from May 22nd of last year. As you can see, this little circle spot, that was actually debris from the tornado as it pushed through the area. Now, this helped us to, A, confirm that there was a tornado, and B, know that we needed to make you guys aware of what you need to know. So with nocturnal tornadoes, even though they are a large concern, the best thing you can do is just be prepared. Don't ignore the sirens when they go off. Have multiple ways to get weather information, and overall, have a safe place for you to go to.
Before the tornado hit Jefferson City, the community of Eldon had to face it first. Hear how a local hotel owner looked for a sign in the aftermath of the storm. Plus, later in rebuilding mid-Missouri 1 year later, I'll tell you about the preparations underway in the event a tornado were to hit mid-Missouri amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
And welcome back to our special Rebuilding Mid-Missouri 1 year later. We're continuing to retrace the steps of that Jefferson City tornado. Now, of course, Jefferson City gets a lot of the headlines because they had the highest rated damage, EF3 rated damage, but this thing was on the ground well before it was in the capital city itself. It barreled right along Highway 54, but we'll step that back before it even had a tornado warning, and that was working its way through Morgan County and eventually touched down a tornado initially just to the west of the city of Eldon. This is what it looked like, though. 10:45, again, that's when the National Weather Service issued that tornado warning, that initial warning for this storm that ultimately would turn into the Jefferson City tornado. But again, it moved through Eldon initially, and what that did was it ultimately changed our tone the night of that fateful event. But we'll flip back over to those velocities. Again, those reds and greens, that's areas of rotation. And watch this really ramp back up. Those brighter colors start to show back up. That's when that thing was really starting to tighten up, and that was when the tornado was on the ground already. And we had confirmation of it that night. You see that dark blue? That's debris being tossed well over 10,000 feet up into the air, being picked up by that radar beam. And that ultimately, again, changed our tone that night, that we had a tornado on the ground and it was moving right along Highway 54. Putting those two together, we were able to give folks in Jefferson City about 30 to 40 minutes of additional lead time out ahead of this tornado warned storm before there was even a tornado warning for Cole County itself that night. So Eldon played a pivotal role that night as we continue to retrace those steps.
Thanks, Kevin. Businesses in Eldon are still recovering from the tornado. We spoke to the owner of a local motel that survived the storms that night more than a year ago. Hear her incredible story of how she found a sign in the destruction the tornado left behind.
I'm ABC 17 STORMTRACK meteorologist Luke Victor in Eldon, Missouri at the historic Randall's Court Motel. I spoke with owner Jennifer Hart about their road to recovery over the past year and how this sign behind me brought it all together.
The tornado, whenever it hit, it basically, the porch was like a wind tunnel, and so the debris was all over. 9 of our 15 windows were busted out, and 2 of my office windows were busted out. The major damage came because of the roof being taken off of our rooms, and so we had gotten it tarped, but following the tornado for like 3 weeks straight, it was nothing but storms. Our rooms never really had a chance to completely dry out, and so we continued to sustain more damage because of that. All 6 of our rooms had to be completely taken down to the studs.
The rooms were finally finished this past January, the sign put up back in early March. I asked Jennifer what part of the recovery felt most significant. It was then she told me the unlikely story behind restoring the sign.
The sign was blown into pieces all over the property, basically. I think we counted 40 separate pieces. There were so many volunteers here that, oh my goodness, that was overwhelming to have the help that we had. So everyone that was picking debris up, we just started piling the pieces of the sign. We had laid all the pieces out on the grass out here in the yard, and we had one of the big panels was missing.
And perhaps it was right place, right time, but she had soon found a lead.
One evening, I was scrolling through, like somebody had done aerial shots. Something caught my attention, and so the piece of the sign was actually just across the street. What you see is a miracle. Like the fact that we found all the pieces and the fact that they were able to bend the pieces to get it to fit on a frame. It needed to be preserved, and it's beautiful. I can't wait to see it lit.
Jennifer tells me that this Great Depression-era motel has been through recessions, renovations, the tornado, and now the COVID-19 pandemic. When asked by friends and neighbors how she keeps going, she says the building's still standing. I told her it must be a sign. Reporting for the STORMTRACK weather team, I'm meteorologist Luke Victor.
A campaign launched in Jefferson City after the tornado helped raise thousands of dollars. We'll tell you how that money was used next on Rebuilding Mid-Missouri 1 year later. Also, hear about emergency preparations in place if a tornado were to touch down in Mid-Missouri during the coronavirus pandemic. Welcome back. A T-shirt campaign in Jefferson City raised over $30,000 for the American Red Cross in the aftermath of the May tornado. The Leadership Jefferson City class of 2012 says they only initially set out to sell a couple hundred shirts, but ended up selling more than 4,500 shirts. They were sold across the capital city until mid-July. According to the Red Cross, the money went towards food, water, and shelter for mid-Missouri families who lost their homes in last year's tornadoes and flooding.
There were several tornadoes, not just one, that touched down in between Miller County and Cole County. And so it helped the relief efforts there. And it also helped with the flooding that we saw in June.
Some families are still searching for a home after the tornado hit Jefferson City. ABC 17's Sydney Olson shares how 2 local groups are making sure people have a place to stay.
Both River City Habitat for Humanity and the Salvation Army are helping families who are impacted by the tornado. They say COVID-19 has impacted their efforts to help.
I think people are still struggling. There's still people that can't find housing. There's people that have left our town because they weren't able to find housing after the tornado.
River City Habitat for Humanity is building homes for families impacted by the tornado. Those efforts came to a halt for several months because of the coronavirus pandemic, but are starting to pick up again. Cook Williams said some families are having to make cuts where they can't afford to because they cannot find housing.
We have a family of 4 that's living in a 1-bedroom, 400 square foot apartment because that's all that they could find.
The Salvation Army also has families in its shelters that were impacted by the tornado.
Since the tornado, we have been running at full capacity, both in Columbia and Jeff City, with our shelter up until the COVID pandemic began.
The shelters had to pull a few beds to follow social distancing guidelines. Holloway says finding housing for lower-income individuals has been especially difficult.
And it's become even more so because there is a number of complexes, neighborhoods that simply aren't being rebuilt.
River City Habitat for Humanity says it hopes to still be able to build the 9 homes that it planned to this year, 5 of which will go to families that were impacted by the tornado. Reporting from Jefferson City, Sydney Olson, ABC 17 News.
We continue to hear stories of recovery from that night 1 year ago. The less than 10-month-old Special Olympics Training Center for Life in Jefferson City took a direct hit. We're told the storm caused nearly $5.5 million in damage, but the cost was covered by insurance. The COVID-19 pandemic has also slowed the recovery process. In-person activities are suspended through next month. Special Olympics Missouri says it hopes athletes and staff can return soon.
We miss them, they miss us, so we're really ready to get back together when we can. We're hoping after June that we can begin to plan to be back together physically and together again.
And we told you 6 months ago about the plans to rebuild the Riley Auto Group dealership in Jefferson City. The work to demolish the buildings off Christie Drive is expected to wrap up this month. The EF3 tornado on the night of May 22nd caused millions of dollars in damages to the auto group and its vehicles. Co-owner Kevin Riley says construction is underway on a new dealership.
What we really want to do is get it under roof as quick as we can because there's so many things to do. And if we can beat winter, then we can really move real quick about completing the interiors and getting operational.
Riley Auto Group hopes to move into its new dealership in about 10 months or so. And next on Rebuilding Mid-Missouri 1 year later, I'm taking a closer look at what preparations are in place if a tornado similar Welcome back to Rebuilding Mid-Missouri. May typically brings Missouri the most tornadoes of any other month. Just weeks ago, severe storms ripped through the southern part of the state, leaving behind significant wind damage. Governor Parson addressed the cleanup.
It is a balancing act between COVID-19, reopening the economy, severe weather, and many other things on a daily basis. but I want to assure you we are prepared in the state of Missouri.
Dealing with a global pandemic has been a huge transition for all of us. But could we handle another violent tornado like last year's? Cole County EMA Director Sierra Thomas says local and state agencies have been talking about the possibility for weeks.
Initially, I was a little uneasy because I was thinking how our resources have almost been completely tapped in response to that. But working with the Safe Fire, law enforcement, putting our heads together and trying to figure out how we would respond differently. And with the new shipments of PPE coming in, how would we respond safely? And I think that we would do fine now.
Firefighters already wear protective gear, but law enforcement would wear masks and gloves to help out tornado victims. The threat of potential virus spread would have to be considered when bringing in the Red Cross and other outside volunteers.
We would have to look at different things like the feeding operations we had to do, our shelters that would come in place for more social distancing, protection against the volunteers that work in the center, plus the people that be in the center.
The virus has kept many of us at home and more aware of bad weather, along with being steps away from our severe weather safe places. A crucial comfort for those who live through May 22nd.
Maybe the community is not hyper vigilant, but I think that they are taking that into consideration, that it is a possibility, especially coming up on the year anniversary.
The average lead time for a tornado is about 13 minutes. You should still use that time to get to shelter since it's an immediate threat, even if you have to get closer than 6 feet from others.
I really wouldn't push social distancing as much if there was a tornado event.
You could stay ahead of possible severe weather in mid-Missouri with the ABC 17 STORMTRACK weather app. Our weather app will alert you to watches and warnings for your area, and it gives you access to the ABC 17 STORMTRACK Insider blog. The ABC 17 STORMTRACK weather app can be downloaded for free from the Apple or Google Play stores. Thanks for joining us for this ABC 17 News special, Rebuilding Mid-Missouri 1 year later. For the ABC 17 STORMTRACK weather team, I'm Chief Meteorologist Jessica Quick. Have a great night.
You've been watching the ABC 17 News special, Rebuilding Mid-Missouri.